All right. Hey everyone, this is Faye from Feisworld Media. I am super thrilled to be here with my friend, my colleague, Jenny Lisk, who recently published a book called Future Whittle. And I must say that this is not one of the books that I heard, received from an email, got it, because I've known Jenny for a long time. And I just have huge respect for everything she's put into this book and who she is, who I got to know in the past couple of years, running a podcast, the Whittled Parent podcast, and the people she introduced on her show. And then in the past year, how much she dedicated into this book. This is Remember, that wasn't just any last year, that was 2020. So she was raising her two kids by herself while writing this book, reflecting on a very special period of her life. So welcome, Jenny. I'm so glad you're here with me on a Saturday afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you, Faye. It's great to be here. And I should say, in my time zone, it's still Saturday morning. So I've got my coffee here, and I hope you won't mind if I continue working on that while we speak.
Oh, absolutely. And you are in Seattle, so you got some good coffee there. What is that you're drinking?
Well, I have the Costco, big old thing of coffee that I threw in my coffee maker right before we got on this call. So, it's great.
Super fancy. You made it your way.
Yep.
For anybody who's watching this, no matter where you are, if you're on YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, my personal page, or the Feisworld page right now, feel free to leave questions. I always go back and kind of gather them. Maybe we'll do a follow video. But I also am going to monitor my YouTube channel live because this is kind of a YouTube live, YouTube premiere situation. So feel free to chat with us there if you want. I'll try to pick up as many questions as possible. All right, we'll get started. I gave Jenny full permission to kind of also help us navigate the conversations to, what's most helpful, interesting to her as well. So, Jenny, you published this book in January 2021.
Yes.
Oh my God, so much has happened. So, so could you give us, we're going to talk so much about this book, your journey, the fact that you lost your husband, you saved your family, you raised your two kids, and you found your voice as a podcaster, as an author, as a YouTuber as well. Jenny, you have your own YouTube channel. But I'm going to talk about the first two line items here. Could you give us maybe like a little brief history of basically what made you want to write this book and what is this story about?
Yeah. Brief. Okay, I will try to be brief. Oh, we could talk about this all day because there are so many different aspects to it. But 5 years ago, actually, right about now, 5 years ago last week, my husband died of brain cancer. It was glioblastoma, which is a very aggressive type of brain cancer. And you might have heard of it because it's actually in the news over the last few years. First, Beau Biden died of it, and then John McCain died of it just a couple years ago. And Dennis actually got sick in May of 2015. And so it's, going to be coming up on 6 years here from when this whole thing started. And it was the weirdest thing because there was no dramatic like passing out or, it was kind of like, oh, I've been feeling a little dizzy lately. That started the whole thing, right? And, people could be dizzy for all kinds of reasons. You didn't drink enough water, or whatever, right? And so he made an appointment to go see his regular internal medicine doctor. And it very quickly became, let's do an MRI. You have something very wrong with your brain. You need to go to the neurosurgeon tomorrow. The neurosurgeon says, we're doing surgery the next day. And so this was, like I said, in May of 2015. That started 8 months of caregiving, ultimately hospice, ER visit after ER visit, multiple surgeries. I think in one point in the book, I think I made a comment that we had like 4 ER visits in 1 week. Like,
Wow.
So just thing after thing for 8 months. And ultimately, he died at home here with hospice 5 years ago, like I said.
Wow. So, this is a very special book because most of us will probably assume, and it was very difficult to write. A lot of the pieces came from your journaling of what happened. And first of all, I was really, before I read the book, I kind of want to surprise myself, not to listen to all the podcasts, and I really want to kind of just immerse myself in it. I lost my dad
Mm-hmm.
almost exactly 11 years ago, and I remember being in the hospital, being a caregiver alongside my mom, and those were pretty horrific days, like terrifying days. I
Hmm.
just remember the worst part of it, just feeling so scared all the time, not just the actual pain and the procedures themselves. Yet you wrote so much of it down, which I didn't. I think it was another way of, for me, it was about reading other books, watching movies, and writing my own book at the time. What made you realize at the time that you're journaling consistently? Who was it for then?
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting question because I didn't initially want to start it was a Carrying Bridge online blog, basically, which a lot of people use to, update friends and family when there's some kind of crisis or medical situation going on. And when he was having his first surgery and we're sitting in the hospital waiting room, for all these hours, and my sister said, maybe you should start a Caring Bridge. And I was like, nah, like, I'll just keep sending some texts and a couple emails here and there and just kind of keep people in the loop. And pretty quickly it became obvious that that was just not going to work because we were very lucky that we had a large number of people who really cared and wanted to know what was going on and help, and we needed a lot of help for a long period of time. I mean, 8 months is a long time. And I should say, by the way, we had meals delivered for the better part of a year,
Wow. Yeah.
3 times a week, because so many people wanted to help, and which was terrific. And I realized that if I started writing on Caring Bridge, that I could, post an update and not be sending a million texts, right? It just seemed in the beginning, it seemed more efficient, right? I'll post one update. Anybody who wants to look at it can look at it. If they don't, that's fine. And it seemed efficient. And you can see my posts in the beginning when you read the book, they're very much more like, okay, he had surgery and he's out. And, maybe he'll come home on this day, kind of more matter of fact, status-y update kind of thing. But as I went on, 8 months is a long time and things change. And I started becoming more reflective and sharing more of what was going on, either, behind the scenes or what I was thinking about, or um, reflecting on this just strange situation we were in. And also, so there are kind of multiple layers to it. I was also really being deliberate about sharing with people, um, like what I appreciated that was helpful, and also trying to um, show people what was going on, that they didn't need to be afraid to, ask me something if they ran into me or acknowledge it. You pretty quickly find out that some people don't know what to say,
Mhm.
and some people do, and which is, and it's totally fine because it depends on what you've experienced so far and stuff. But I realized that I could share some of that, and that would be helpful, um, you know, to me, making things less awkward when I ran into people, and hopefully to them as well. If if and some people did mention that I was, kind of showing people along the way some of this. So I think that was part of it.
Yeah, now it really makes a lot of sense, and I realize that you actually did mention Caring Bridge in several times in the book. The fact that you don't have to send so many text messages and have to update people the same information
Mm,
every single time. I realized that Caring Bridge wasn't something that my mom and I had access to. There's probably some sort of a local, we were in China at the time, is some equivalent of a system that we weren't aware of, or we just didn't really think about. We didn't really have that support network
mm,
to us. So it was just, there's so many, for people who are watching this, I gotta say that even though we are somehow all scared of the word cancer or serious illness in general, we are all so connected these days. It doesn't even need to be cancer. And these days we have COVID and 18 million other things to worry about. So somehow just there's a system approach that you've embedded in your book that I found really helpful. For me, 11 years later, I kept thinking to myself, wow, this is a great idea. It doesn't have to be a technology piece, or wow, I wish I did that. And
mm.
there's no feeling of regrets or pain, but rather makes me smile to realize that your book is an invaluable resource to people who are facing this, who will face this. You know, at some point, we all face illness, whether that's ourselves or our loved ones. So this is truly a labor of love. Are you
Well,
going to say
thank you.
something, Jenny?
Well, I was just, as you mentioned this book being a resource, I couldn't help but think about this, what it says right here on the very top, on the front. And I'm so thrilled that Dr. B.J. Miller provided a blurb for this. And what it says right here, a poignant memoir and de facto guide for caring for a loved one. And he's a hospice and palliative medicine physician, as you obviously know. You have a picture of him behind you. I know you've worked with him extensively and interviewed him as well. But I just, what you were saying reminded me. I mean, there are multiple kind of things going on in this book. And one aspect is, readers have told me that it is in a way a guide to help. And not everybody obviously has the exact same situation, but I think there's a lot that can be learned from studying other people's situations and taking what we can from them.
Mm-hmm. Beautifully said. And I am so proud of you to have, reach out to so many people. You've done your research above and beyond. If you guys go to jennylisk.com, am I butchering that right now? I feel like everything's under jennylisk.com, right?
Or yeah, JENNYLISK.com. Yep.
Awesome.
There's multiple ways to spell Jenny, but gotta have the Y in there.
Oh, this is the only way. I just realized you're
really?
The only Jenny I know. Don't spell it any other way.
Oh no, there's JENNI and IE and one N, and there's a lot of Jennifers in my age group growing up in this country. And so I get my name spelled differently on Starbucks cups and pizza boxes, and
That's so interesting. I actually thought for a moment that's only like what we as immigrants experience, because Faye will be spelled God knows how many ways. But I never thought an American name will be
all the time. And you know what? I've started saying, this is a total diversion, but one time I called for a takeout pizza or something, and I was a Jenny with a Y. And the person wrote Yenny, Yenny. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess I can't say it that way anymore.
That didn't work. Oh, you never know what you're getting. Oh,
exactly.
That's awesome. Maybe that should be like your pen name or something.
Yep. I'll masquerade that way. Jenny Lisk.
Jenny Lisk. So Jenny Lisk, it's on the screen. You guys check out her website, because I gotta say, I have built many websites. I've nurtured and babied mine for a long time. It is so thoughtful. There are resources and guides not only for patients, caregivers, families, but also people, clinicians, people who care, as well as people just even, you find yourself either in or out of the situation, you find something really, really useful there. And
I think you're getting yeah. Oh, sorry. Are you speaking about the allies, what I call them, the people who are
allies, yeah,
supporting the friends, their family, their colleagues, their neighbors who are in some kind of crisis or after a death or in a critically ill situation. And this is one of the ways I kind of wanted to give back, right? I learned so much from this tremendous support of the people around us, and had people helping us in so many different ways that I started, after my husband died, people started reaching out to me and saying, hey, my friends, colleagues, somebody, just died and have these 3 kids, what should I do? And I realized that I could put together some information of how to help people help their friends, how to help them be supportive. And so, that's a big part of what I'm doing as well, with some of the YouTubes, as well as some, things can be downloaded and other information too.
That's exactly kind of how we met. First of all, a shout out to Tammy Gulerlove for introducing us. And now, with full transparency, Jenny and I get to see each other on Zoom at least every 2 weeks. So we started this conversation about the book, about the podcast, years before. So it is such a privilege, because for me, I feel like I'm really seeing a lot of the puzzle pieces, before they were put together. And I want to just really address a lot of people who may be watching this right now, whether you are content creator, YouTubers, podcasters, authors. There is something, and Jenny, I definitely want to hear the next part from you too, is a lot of us creating something from scratch right now. Feels like we're so excited. Phase one, so excited, so proud of ourselves. We can give up the weekend, nights and weekends, and just do this. And then phase two is like, what the heck am I doing? Like, this is incoherent. I'm not qualified. I'm stupid. I don't deserve to do this. And then a lot of people comes to that point will quit. The families don't feel like what is that you're doing? You can't answer that question. I don't have enough resources. I can't even pay for this software. The cover isn't good enough. I'm a failure. So what is that process like for you, Jenny? Did you ever run whether with this book or with the podcast or with the website, did you ever run into the wall or that feeling of what exactly am I doing? Or was that not part of your creative process?
All the time. And this wasn't like it happened once and I got over it. No, all the time. And I would add to your list of questions and doubts, is this making a difference anyway? Is this helping anybody anyway? Right? Like, I'm doing all these things, and as you know, running a podcast is a lot of work, and kind of the why am I doing this anyway? Is this helping anybody? And so there's a few things. Well, you can't see here because it's in the other side of the camera, but I put a little envelope on my wall and I printed out, sometimes I get social media comments or emails, from people saying, I love what you're doing. This is how it's helped me, or, some kind of nice and supportive comments. And you know what? I've printed some of them out and I've laminated them and I put them in this, like, no, seriously, I got all these things here and I put them in this little envelope, like just like on the wall right behind my desk. And sometimes when I'm like, why am I doing this? I just I pull these out and I read them and I'm like, okay, this is why, right? It is actually, and that if you're getting a certain number of comments that are positive and supportive, then that's like a tip of an iceberg, right? And there's a whole bunch of people who maybe are thinking those same things, but haven't reached out to, to actually say that for whatever reason. And so that is helpful for sure. And I'd encourage anybody to, go back and pull out some of that stuff and think about it. Because it really is, when you go day after day after day, late night after late night, and, struggling to get all these things done. That's part of it. Part of it is, finding myself procrastinating. I find that usually it's because I'm afraid of something, afraid of failing, afraid of tackling something. And there was actually Adam Grant had a text, not a text, a tweet a while ago where he talked about unpacking what causes procrastination. And so really identifying those things has been helpful. And the other thing I would mention, you mentioned our mutual friend, Tammy Gula-Loeb. She and I actually have been writing accountability partners. And so we've been meeting regularly to work on each of our books. And having somebody that you can meet with week after week, you both know what each other are working on. I can't tell you how many times she kind of talked me down when I was like, why am I writing this book anyway? Maybe I should just can the whole thing. And having somebody there who's familiar with what you're doing, who can be like, don't you remember this is why you're writing it? And then you go, okay, you're right. Right? Sometimes you need that outside perspective,
Yeah. That's so true. It's like the 6-7 of us get together every 2 weeks to, talk about something, to overcome something together or for each other separately. Well, one of the things, if you remember, that came up is live streaming. And that really surprised me because you threw out a question, just leave hang, just answer. It's like, oh, this is how you do it. And a day later, oh my God. And a day later, and for the next month, few months or so, I saw you going live with OBS. For people who don't know this, it's like logo here, newscasting and kind of rolling scripts. I don't even know what those things are called. And you're going live like a pro with other people. So tell us a bit about that. What was that experience like for you?
Yeah. Well, and I apologize here. I seem to have spilled my coffee, so that's the cause
a
of my
live. See, now people know it's live. This is not
right. Otherwise, you'd be cutting that out. I'd be saying, stop. Let's edit this. Yeah. Okay. So we met in our Saturday group, I didn't even know what OBS was. And Jess was talking about using OBS, and I'm like, okay, wait, Jess, what is OBS? And so she explained it very helpfully, and I started messing around with it. And I should also say, this refers back to the previous question. One of the reasons I was procrastinating on some book rewrites that I needed to do. Like, I seriously needed to re-engage with some pretty massive isn't the right word, some pretty substantive revisions that I needed to get my teeth into. And I was totally procrastinating. I think I was afraid to tackle it. So I was like, oh, but I can like figure out OBS and I can figure out live streaming because that's still something productive, right? Well, I'm not doing the things I need to be doing. And so I part of it is my tech background too. I spent 20 years in corporate IT, so not practical related to this stuff, but just made it kind of fun to work on these things now. But I got it set up so that I have OBS is where I'm going live, and then that's hooked to Restream, and then Restream is hooked to my Facebook, my Twitter, my YouTube, and my website. And I realized that Children's Grief Awareness Month was coming up in November, this past November. I mean, every November, but this specifically a few months ago here. And Children's Grief Awareness Month is a month when raising awareness of children's grief is a really, I think, it's an important opportunity for that. And that's, my podcast is all about parents, widowed parents who are still raising their kids and their teenagers, and how, those parents can help, and resources and ideas and information and all that. And I realized that I could go live in November, and I decided to do it 1 or 2 times a day, which was kind of crazy in the end. But interviewing different, mostly grief centers. There are kids and family grief centers in different cities around the country. And they each have programs, and most of them have groups for kids and teenagers and adults, and some of them run camps in the summer, and they have other resources. And I wanted to be able to highlight each of those places. And also, so it kind of had multiple purposes, right? Because I could go live across all these platforms at the same time, raise awareness. And then also, of course, the video got, saved, and I put it on YouTube on the right playlist. And then built out the resources section of my website to say, okay, organized by state. If you're in, California, then here's Cara you could look up. And the idea is you can then click on their page, see a short, like a 10-minute interview with the person who runs it, and a description of their program and some bullet points about what kind of programs they have, and links, of course, to all their stuff. And so as a way to help get the word out. And I tried to really be strategic about tying it back in with my website, not like just doing the live stream and then having that be the one opportunity for that content to be in the world. Or, well, I guess you could say 4 opportunities, because YouTube and LinkedIn, and not LinkedIn, Facebook, etc. But I wanted to capture that as a kind of a permanent resource, because someone spending 10 minutes talking about their program isn't just relevant on the day I interview them. It's relevant ongoing for quite a long time. And so building out that resource on my website to then be able to have listeners, for example, on my podcast, go and say, I'm in this state. Oh, there's something near me. And the whole objective was to be like, oh, like watch the 10-minute video and say, they sound helpful. They sound nice. I'm going to call them. Right. It also helped me build more connections in the field by interviewing all these people who are doing work in this same field. So I tried to really think through all the different elements of how to make it be mutually beneficial, and how to make it live beyond the 1 10-minute period where I was talking with them live, and be something that could be leveraged ongoing.
I really love the fact that you're talking about this part in such details, right? By the way, this is completely unscripted. I didn't really give Jenny a lot of the questions ahead of this live stream, but
you didn't give me any questions.
No questions. But we connect all the time, and I really love how you are prompted with these questions and just kind of reacting, responding live. Because for people who are considering self-publishing, or you have written the manuscript and even with the editor at this point, definitely, I would say, pay close attention to what Jenny is saying, and maybe reach out to Jenny directly, because we are, all of us are noticing Jenny's unique ability in exploring this kind of ecosystem for authors. So it's really, to me, what I learned from you and from other people I'm helping, I'm witnessing, is that, oh my God, publishing your book, like this part is very, very hard. Writing it, putting it on Amazon, being one of the best sellers in a category is a lot of work, but so many people just drop it. Like you are
Mm.
exhausted, I know. Or if you're not quite here yet, you know you're going to be exhausted because you will be. However, number one, like you said, Tammy, as being a counterpart, a accountability partner. You know, I feel like Jenny, when I publish my book, I want you to be my accountability partner. I know Tammy already signed up with you, but I'm just pre-announcing my
Sounds
positioning.
good. Sounds good.
But also, you know, I think you're so creative when it comes to reaching out, kind of lighting up the networks around you. Because so one person can all of us can argue, and this is a very personal story. You could easily make it about all about you, your two kids. That's it. Maybe your
Mm.
sisters and your, Denny's families. That's it. But instead, you really broaden the reach and the connections between this book and the communities and all these organizations, charities. And I feel like everybody, no matter what book you're writing, that's what you should be thinking about. It is
Mm.
giving, sharing your platforms. You can't really see. I'm kind of proud of this. Like, rise by lifting.
Nice.
Yeah, rise by lifting
Nice.
others. That's
Uh-huh.
what I wore this for you. But even though I wish that you can see more of it,
Yeah, I know. That's the problem with the camera but yeah.
that's what you're doing, and you can feel
uh,
it knowing I'm wearing this. And I think that's what you're doing. And if you guys want to explore something with Jenny, I feel like that this is really the hidden gem. So bravo,
thank you.
really great job. So much
Thank
work.
you. Well, you're absolutely right. I guess, to underscore that point, I mean, having a book that ends up something you can hold in your hand is critical step one. But it's important to realize it is only step one, right?
Mhm.
That, I mean, the writing it and getting it professionally edited and having a awesome cover design and thinking through like that is the critical, but it's so much not sufficient to like launch your book into the world. I mean, it's like it is enough to get the book in your hands, yes, but how many other people's hands? Presumably you want to get it into lots of people's hands, right? So that's the whole other side of being an author. And a lot of authors I hear don't, like, they have an aversion to marketing or something, selling or talking about themselves or talking about their book or whatever. But it's getting the book on Amazon is the easy part. It's what are you going to do with it from there? How do you get that book then into people's hands?
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, starting early and being strategic about, who is going to read this book and how do I reach them and how do I reach the people who can reach them, um, is really important to keep in mind all throughout the process.
Mm.
And it's an important, I had somebody reach out to me the other day who said, my book is launching in 2 weeks and I'm launching it myself and I don't know what to do. Can you help me? And I was like, well, if it's launching in 2 weeks, it's a little late to be asking this question,
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Yeah. When would be the right time to think about it? Or when did you start thinking about the audience, who to reach out to?
Well, I started really early. When I started my first draft,
Wow.
I started talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that was to keep myself accountable. And part of that was to have people know what I didn't want to drop a book on the world and be like, guess what? Now I wrote a book, here it is. And nobody's heard anything about it yet. Right.
Right.
And one of the things that I was really frustrated about in 2019, I kept thinking, I'm going to start writing, and as I had the Caring Bridge to start with, right? And I had to start writing the writing all around it, the reflections and the other stuff. And I kept thinking I'll carve out an hour here and an hour there, and it just wasn't happening. And I got super frustrated. And so finally in the summer of 2019, I said, you know what? August, I'm clearing my calendar. I'm not going to do any podcast episodes. I'm going to cancel everything I possibly can. And I'm going to write 1,000 words a day.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to post about it on social media every day. And I'm going to say, I wrote 1,002 words today, or, whatever.
Yeah,
Or today I wrote 1,239 words or whatever, right?
Mm.
And there were two purposes to that. Keeping myself accountable was a huge part of it, because I didn't want to, have to post and say, well, I didn't write anything today.
Mhm.
Like,
I'm
and so
taking
there
notes
were,
right now.
what's that?
I'm taking notes. I got to start doing this. Please
Yeah,
continue.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I said, and you know what? And here's the thing. I had no idea if 1,000 words a day for the month of August was going to be enough, too much, right? Like, but I knew it would get me started.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that at the end of August, I would have a bunch of words, and I would either say, okay, I need to do X amount more, or I would say, no, I'm done, or whatever. But I knew that if I didn't put a stake in the ground, I would never get started.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got to say, every day except one, I did do. And that day, I was like, I can't do this. And the next day, I did 2,000 words, and then I posted on social media. Okay, yesterday I did nothing, but today I did 2,000 words, and kind of like, forgive me, like.
Did people respond to that? Did people like, oh, keep going?
Yes, people were super supportive, super supportive. And
Wow.
this was then also part of, talking about what you're doing early, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is starting in August of 2019, I've had people who've been, following along on social media saying, I can't wait till your book comes out. I can't wait to read it. Being supportive. And when I would post, I wrote X number of words today and it was awesome, they'd be like, yay, way to go. And I would post like, oh my God, I got 1,000 words exactly, and this was so awful. Then they would be supportive, And so knowing that these, friends and colleagues and people were following along and being supportive was super helpful to the process. And like I said, has resulted in a lot of people who've been looking forward to reading it. And it's been so great to, I've been hearing from a lot of these people by email or by text or by social media message since the book came out last week. People who I know, I remember were following along a year and a half ago, and now I have said, I got it. And I sat down, I read the whole thing in one sitting, and, I love this or that or whatever. And congratulations. It's been so great to hear, kind of close the loop a little bit, like these early supporters,
Yeah.
to now see that, like, I did finish, first of all, and then they read it and, were super kind and supportive about it. It's been really great.
Okay, I got like so many follow-up questions. I'm gonna try to distill to two, which
Okay.
is
Yep.
when we say social media, I know we're all on different platforms, and so Facebook usually is more friends and family, LinkedIn's more professional network, but which of the platforms, and Twitter too, probably not Twitter, I don't know, but which of the platforms do you find most warm and fuzzy, that people are most engaged in the context of what you just talked about, writing your book?
Well, yeah, I don't know if I'm a good example about this or not. Some people will say pick one platform or one or two platforms and, hit those hard. I didn't want to do that. I hit all of them. So and you can copy paste stuff right across, but, so Facebook has been huge because a lot of my, new friends, old friends, nearby friends, far away friends, lots and lots of people that I'm connected with in lots and lots of ways are all on Facebook. And so I wanted to make sure that I was keeping them up to date on what was going on. Instagram is for like the widow community, and more broadly speaking, the grief topic and grief community. Instagram is huge for that. There's a lot of posts and hashtags and people active there. So I didn't want to leave Instagram out. In fact, I hadn't been on Instagram at all until I started the podcast. So I had to really catch up and learn like what to do on Instagram. But I really didn't want to leave that out because there's a lot of important for my topic there. I do Twitter as well because there's a lot of good information there. And I try to do like retweet like 3 other people's other posts that are related to the topic and then tweet one of mine. So I try to do a balance there. And then LinkedIn as well, because of all the professional connections. And it's interesting because in the beginning, my professional connections on LinkedIn were entirely people from my old life in corporate IT. And I'm like, I'm posting all this like grief stuff and podcast stuff, and they're not going to be interested in that. It felt a little weird at first. But over time, I've still got all those people obviously I'm connected to, but more and more people I've met like through the entrepreneurial world, as well as people I've met through the grief world, people who run grief centers and other people I'm connected to professionally in the field. And I've come to realize that even all those people from my old life that I thought might not be interested, actually a lot of this is relevant for them too, particularly the allies piece of how they can be supportive, right? And then now that we're in a global pandemic and grief is so much more on everybody's mind, you're you're starting to see it more and more talked about on LinkedIn and other places as well. Anyway, I am on, and so you asked, your question was about social media platforms. I'm messing around a little bit here and there with Pinterest. I haven't really done a very consistent job with that, but it's kind of lower on my priority list. But I do feel like since some of my stuff, like, quote cards and interviews and the short audio, 30-second audio clips and things would be a good thing for Pinterest, but I haven't really done too good of a job with that one. And then it is on my list to get on TikTok. And as you know, I put out one short video on TikTok, which was just like opening the box of my books. It's like, like a little clip of my books, unboxing, like a 10-second unboxing clip. I haven't really decided, which way I'm going to go. But I would just say, for people who are listening thinking this is crazy, it's all 15-year-olds, there's a whole, like, all these hashtags of like Gen X TikTokers and stuff. It's bigger than you think, as you know. And I think it would be an interesting thing to experiment with and a fun thing. So that's probably coming this year.
Right. I mean, it wasn't for you. I wouldn't even think about putting Dr. BJ Miller on TikTok. I mean, you just said it during our get together. And when you said it, I too was thinking this is for 14, 15-year-olds doing all kinds of dance moves only. But you said to me, like, Faye, check it out. Check out Gen X TikTokers. There were like 60, some millions of people there. And we looked up hospice, palliative care, and there was a whole community, nurses, social workers, doctors, and there's like something called doctors, TikTok doctors. So there's I almost said subreddits, but there are definitely niche interest in anything. And so I think it's just wonderful. As you know, that Dr. Miller's account has only been around for 2 weeks, and yesterday we went over 12,000 views. 12,000 views on mostly surrounding a few videos. So it's so wonderful.
That's awesome.
I have a book. Yeah, thank you. I have a book related question, follow-up question, because you talk about your routine, which is fantastic. Guys, if you're single or otherwise, but look, Jenny has 2 teenagers. There are so many, even though, I'm so glad they're kind of older now, you don't have to like babysit them and kind of create a schedule for them necessarily, but still, you got other people other than yourself to care for. So I can imagine once you finish writing the book, a draft, at what stage did you choose or realize, like, okay, let me hire a professional editor? Because that's like the step I'm struggling with, because I don't know at what shape. So I think I'll do a rough draft without criticizing myself, which means I'll never finish criticizing myself. I'll do a reread or self-edit, and then I probably will work with an editor. At what point did that come about for you? Like, what was the timeline like?
Yeah. Well, I always knew that that was part of the plan, to hire an editor eventually. I didn't want to not have it be as professional as possible. So like I said, I did the first draft in August of 2019. And then for various personal reasons and podcast related reasons, I kind of let it sit until like spring of 2020. And then I get frustrated because I kept thinking, I'll squeeze in some time to work on some rewrites. I'll squeeze in some time. And then the same thing as the year before. I never was squeezing in time, right? And then finally I decided, like, about April, May, maybe, I was like, you know what? I think it was May. I'm going to clear May like I did last year and try to just focus on this. And I decided this time I was going to make YouTube video updates of status. Like the first time around, I had done just social media written posts, right? I was like, maybe this time I'll make a YouTube that says, hey guys, this is my writing update for May 3rd, and here's what I did today. That had mixed results. I think not as many people watched the videos because, it's easier when you're scrolling by quickly to read a little short update than it is to, even if the video is only 2 minutes, right? but it was still building up some content for my YouTube channel. And I embedded those videos on the memoir page on my website so that if people were looking at that, they could see the latest writing update, video from me, which I think was that part was a nice touch. But your question was about hiring an editor. So then I spent like May and June. I wanted my kind of exactly what you said, get it as good as I can get it on my own, and then hand it off. Right. And so I wanted to, I did revisions. Interestingly, okay, I think I've got it in this stack over here. I got to tell you guys, this book, John Truby, The Anatomy of Story. Can you see it?
Oh, yeah.
This book was so helpful. Somehow I stumbled across it. And well, actually, I know how I stumbled across it because from you, I heard of Joanna Penn. And I've been listening to her podcast obsessively, right? And read some of her books. From Joanna Penn, I learned about another author friend of hers, Nick Stevenson, who has a bunch of other author resources and stuff. And from him, I stumbled across some blog post, which led me to this book.
Oh,
right?
Look at that.
So anyway, the book is called The Anatomy of Story, and it's a long, small print book that really has to be studied. It's not a quick read, right? But it really dissects how you tell a story. And the one thing I didn't want was for my book to be like, this happened, the end. Right? I wanted it to somehow have, be put from a big picture perspective, make sense, tell a story, right? And one of his points is that, so he's actually a filmmaker, but his point is that the principles of storytelling apply in filmmaking and in novels, which makes sense. A novel is a fictional story, but memoir too, even though memoir is true, you still have to tell a story. So you don't have the flexibility in a novel. You can make up a character or make up a action or something, right? In a memoir, you have to stick to the facts, but you still have to tell it in a way that's compelling. So I paused all rewrites, read this book, took all these notes. And I've actually, if I could turn my camera around, which I don't think I can, I've got on the wall up here,
crazy wall?
all these index cards. What?
Is it called like a crazy wall?
Oh,
it's all the.
It could be. I've got all these index cards because he's got like 22 story steps or something. And I made a card and I'm like, okay, this is the, the battle, and this is the self-revelation, and this is the attack by the ally. And like
that's perfect.
And I put them, and I mapped, like I thought about what do I already have in the book and mapped them to the cards. And then what am I missing? What have I forgotten to cover that would flesh out, this aspect or this aspect, or help me tell the story better, right? So I did all these things with the cards, and then I picked the manuscript back up, really grappled with, does the story hang together from a big picture perspective? Are the themes developed? And all that stuff. And then I got so fed up with it. I wanted to do like one more round of improving it.
Yeah.
But I was like, this is, again, you asked earlier about doubts. I was like, I don't know, maybe I should just scrap the whole thing.
Yeah, that's a problem.
And then, and so then I was like, okay, you know what? If I don't get an editor engaged right away, I'm at risk of scrapping the whole thing. Why don't I just like get an editor and like, even if I wish I could do X, Y, and Z before I hand it off, because maybe there are still some things I could do to make it better. I'm like, I'm not going to be able to do that. I just need to give it to somebody else. Somebody else needs to get involved here.
Yeah.
And so I sent it to the editor, and then I was like, okay, but before you even start, like, is this even going to help anybody? Because if it's not, then I don't want to do it. And she was like, oh my gosh, yes, it's definitely going to help people. And so I was like, okay. So then I started working with her on the editing process. And so that was, I think we started working together, last summer. I don't know if it was like July, maybe. Approximately, give or take.
How long for her to return revisions? And what was that? I guess my question is, a lot of people are thinking there are a lot of editors out there. How to actually find a good editor who works well with you, and what is that process like at a high level? Yeah.
Well, you know what? I think a terrific resource is reedsy.com, reedsy.com. It is basically I don't know if portal is the right word. It's a portal for finding and hiring freelance people who do different things related to books. So editors for one.
Mm-hmm.
Also, like if you need a proofreader, if you need a cover design, if you need somebody to do the interior formatting of the book. I
Mm-hmm.
believe there's also a category for like marketing kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so as the author, you can go in there and you create a free profile, log in, whatever, and then you can get into their search tool
Mm-hmm.
and you say, I'm looking for an editor and someone who does memoir. It's also very important not to just be like, oh, like, your friend has an editor and they like their editor, but your friend wrote a business book and you wrote a memoir, or, something else different like that, right? You really want somebody who has experience and expertise in the genre you're writing in, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you can say if you're looking for what genre, and then also there's like US English or UK English, because there's variations.
Wow.
And then you can see all these profiles of people who are very experienced. Most of them seem to have prior experience in big publishing houses and things, and they put on there like, these are some of the books I've edited, and
I'm gonna
and
share
some
real
just.
quick as you're
Oh
talking
yeah,
about it too.
yeah. um yeah, and you probably won't be able to get into the actual search tool since you probably don't have a login set up.
Right.
um
Here, as you're talking, I realized, wow, look at all this. Designers, publicists, marketers. There's
right,
a whole team
right.
of people. Yeah.
I wonder if you can click on view profile on some of those people, if they'll let you see it without being logged in.
Let's check it out. There you go.
Yeah, so here, when this person's probably newer because they only have 2 reviews, but if you scroll down, you'll see they've written an overview,
Mm.
of the kind of stuff they work on, right? So they say they're experiencing young adult fiction, here's some testimonials. If you scroll down, you can probably see some other books they've worked on, the genres, she's a literary agent for some literary agency, right?
Mm.
Some of them you go through, I mean, this person looks newer, but some of them will say, I spent, 15 years at this big, publishing house, whichever they name it, and then, yeah, so they have a portfolio there, some other work.
Mm.
And you can go through and you can say, okay, I would like to put in a proposal with, I think you can pick 5 of them.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna
So
stop
you
share
pick,
while you talk. Yep.
yeah, based on what you read in their profile and what sounds, like the kind of person that might be a good fit for you. And you can look at some of their other work and you can pick, I think it's 5, and then you submit, I think they call it like a brief or something. And so
Mm-hmm.
you say like, here's my book, here's the working title, here's what it's about, here's who it's for. You can upload like a sample, like your first chapter,
Mm-hmm.
and then you submit it. And you can also say, if you want to say like, I have these requirements in terms of budget or timeline, you can put
Mm.
that in as well, or you can
Wow.
leave those out. I left those out because I wasn't sure what was realistic, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
um, and you submit it, and then the people get back to you over the next like day or two. I think I got, the first person, I think everybody had gotten back to me by the following day.
Wow.
Yeah, and like one of them, two of them said, they gave me a bid and they said they could do the work, and this is their process and how they work and what they charge and whatever. One of them said she wasn't interested.
Mm-hmm.
One of them, I think, didn't get back to me, and I forget about the last one. Anyway, and
Mm-hmm.
then you can, like, if none of them work or whatever, you can go back and ask for more.
So what was it, your book, I would like to say the lengthwise is fairly standard. I would say about maybe 60,000 words or so, 250 pages.
I think it's about 50,000 words. Yeah,
50,000. Okay. So what was it? I mean, was the draft much, much longer or more or less the same? And how long
it
did
was
it
about
take?
the same.
Okay.
Yeah,
How long
and
did
we
it take?
didn't, working with the editor, she didn't like, because I tried to have it in pretty good shape
Hmm.
before I brought somebody in, because I wanted to be more efficient and more cost effective, right? I didn't
Hmm.
want to go to somebody with a draft that was like twice as long and then needed cutting down and needed more work and more time and more money and more, like, I thought
Yeah.
I ought to be able to get this in reasonably good shape,
Hmm.
and then I can use an editor, who can help me like bring it to the next level.
Hmm.
And of course, make sure everything was correct in terms of Chicago Manual of Style and all that stuff. Like, so there's different levels. So we did 2 passes through the work. The first pass was And so this is like, I sent it in Microsoft Word. By the way, I wrote it with Scrivener, which a lot of authors like to use, but then you export it to Microsoft Word from there. And usually when you work with an editor, you have it in Word because you can do the track changes and the markup stuff.
Right.
So she went through and, at that point it was mostly like, okay, this part, I love this part, this is good. This part needs, some more explanation. This part, maybe I'm confused. Are you trying to say X? This part, ties with this other part. So do you want to do blah, 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 whatever, right? So lots and lots of comments in the margin with, either this is great, keep it like this, or you might want to flesh this out, or as a reader, I'm confused about this. Maybe you can rework the paragraph to make sure you're not leaving the reader with questions, that kind of stuff. So then she handed it back to me. And so then going through that required a lot of thinking on my part because, and a lot of it too. So then this, when you're working with writing a book, you've got the big picture and the detail at the same time, right? And I didn't want to get lost in the detail of one paragraph and lose how that connected to the overall, right? So it took me a lot of time to, and I'm just realizing it's almost 3:00. Are we running out of time here?
Oh, I know. I was like getting into it. I'm like, I'm going to text. My mom's going to yell lunch in like a minute. But no, with that said, this part is really good. I'll tell her I need like 5 more minutes. But please finish your
We
thought.
could go on for 5 more hours, but
I know, easily. Well, there'll be part 2. Guys, let us on part 2.
Yeah. So where was I? Oh, just, I didn't really want to just like dive in and start typing in changes without really like trying to get a sense of the whole of what she was saying and how maybe what she was asking here relates to what she's asking 20 pages later, relates to something at the end, and like how to make sure that from a big picture perspective it still works. So it took me a while to kind of like let it marinate a little bit and then go through and start, and kind of methodically, like every time I addressed one of the things that she raised, then sometimes I commented back. We had kind of a dialogue going in the comments, right?
Nice.
Because I sent it back to her with, with my changes and my comments, right? And so then sometimes I would write like, well, I'm not sure about this, and ask another question back or whatever. And sometimes I would go ahead and handle something, so it's that kind of level. And I sent it back to her, and then she went through and did a final, like, this part maybe needs some rewording because you used, this word here and again too soon later. Like you don't want to repeat the same, or cleaning up the
Google
Chicago
Doc being used, by the way, like all the back and forth. I was wondering if you use Google Doc instead of Word, Microsoft Word with all the back and forth and real time exchanges.
We use Microsoft Word.
Is there a reason for that?
I think a lot of editors like to work in Microsoft Word.
Gotcha.
I don't know. And, I didn't really need to see like what she was doing in real time, right? Like I needed, like, whatever her process was for going through the whole thing, right. Then it would make sense. Like if I started looking at it while she was doing stuff, it might even confuse things more, right? Like, when she finished her piece of work and handed it back to me, then I could consider as a whole what she was sending back to me, right?
How long was that process like? Again, your draft was really clean, very thoughtful, very organized. What was that back and forth final editing process like? 3 weeks, 3 months?
I think all the way through the 2 rounds was about 6 weeks, maybe.
Okay, 2 rounds, 6 weeks.
5, something like that. And the first round was longer, and part of that was my time too, right? Maybe it was like, I think the first round she got back to me in a week or so. But then I took some time to like assimilate and figure out what I was going to do with it. And also as an author, like, you feel like, okay, you get through the draft and you hand it off and you're like, okay, it's off my plate. Then you get it back and you're like, I had to get back in the right frame of mind for like, and as you said, it's like a personal and deep, topic that it's not just like writing something that I could just dash off. Right? I had to get in the right frame of mind to re-engage with the text. Right. So that part of it too added some time to it. And then I feel like the The second round, she brought back pretty quickly because professional editors, I mean, they know their Chicago Manual of Style and they can go through and they can go boom, 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 right? And
Mm,
then I had to re-engage with it again, although it was easier the last time because the changes were more, I could see, okay, I like this wording she proposed, or I don't, or I like it, but I'm going to tweak it a little bit, right? But still, I went through it multiple more times, top to bottom of like, we kind of joked between us about how I was obsessing over every single word in the 50,000 words of text, but I was because I didn't want it to, if some word is wrong, it could change the whole
yeah, the tone of
vibe of
it.
everything, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this
Um,
is definitely you're mentally preparing me for this. I know some editors have very different styles. Some sounds like in your situations about probing and also kind of making you think differently, think more, or reconsider certain scenarios. Whereas some editors, if they have ghostwriting experience, maybe they will come in and kind of revise it all together. I've heard different styles of these editors, and I'm trying to
mm,
process like what will work better for me. So this is all very, very helpful. And to kind of wrap up our hopefully part one of this conversation here, I would love for you to maybe share with us what you've learned in your journey just as a creator, whether it's writing this book or podcasting, that what is something that you learned perhaps that are often not talked about, or some of the people who are just starting out don't realize that just yet. And
mm,
while you're thinking about that, for example, like to me, for example, is that there's kind of no written path. Like that's something I realize, even if both of us are running the Whittled Parent podcast or something of a similar genre, still for me, like, we have to kind of find our own path. Instead of following kind of this, that there's this blueprint or following this compass all the way to success. Like, what was that something
mm.
that you learned?
I think that it's critical to keep in mind the big picture on all of these things. And by the big picture, I mean like, depending on what it is you're working, like who's my listener or who's my reader and why are they going to want to read or listen?
Mm,
And then the big picture of like, how do I reach them? Like that then informs so much. Like if you're in the details of like, should I invite this guest to my podcast or not, or what content should I make sure I include in my book, or should I do a video on this topic or whatever. Like if you really have a solid understanding of the bigger picture of like who's listening or watching or reading and why,
mm,
then it helps you make those decisions. Like, yeah, this guest would be a good fit for my listeners, or this topic, even though there's a gap, I haven't covered this topic yet. And I know that because I know who I'm doing this for. And I think it's easy to get lost in the weeds of even like, people reach out to me for advice about starting a podcast, right? It's very easy to get lost in like, what kind of microphone should I get and who should be my hosting provider and how do I
so
send my
true.
emails? And those are all important things that have to get decided. But
Hmm.
if you don't have the fundamentals of like how you're approaching this and for who and why, it's really hard to then make those other decisions. And I think that not losing sight of the big picture is critically important, whichever type of content creation you're doing.
This is so well said, and that's something I notice about your big picture as I'm reading part of your bio. Jenny's passionate about helping widow parents increase their family's well-being. I feel like that is kind of your North Star, right? Or
Mm,
do
mm.
you think there's a different big picture North Star that you have in mind?
No, I think that hits it right on the head. And in fact, I've got that taped right here on the edge of my monitor, right? I mean,
Oh,
because it's kind of the umbrella for everything
yeah.
that I'm doing. Then if something that I'm doing fits or doesn't fit in that, it makes it easy to decide, right? As
Hmm.
opposed to like stressing about a lower level decision in the absence of that bigger vision isn't exactly the right word, but
Hmm.
direction.
Mm.
If you have that direction set, then it's easy to evaluate if things do or don't fit in that. Whereas without, missing direction, it's easier to, I think, flail about.
Mm. This is awesome. I have a number of stickers, but I almost feel like in front of, on my iMac, but I'm already thinking about revising some of that and and just having that, to me, like having that North Star, understanding what I'm doing and for whom, and that is super helpful. So thank you so much, Jenny. I really hope people who are watching this, whether you are publishing something or you know someone who's working on that, many of us are writing books, especially people who are watching Feisworld Media in general, definitely think about, reaching out to Jenny and figure out like which part of the process, whether it's finding your big picture or maybe it's live streaming related. She's really become a pro, and also just not just self-publishing, but self-promoting, marketing your book the right way in 2021. Please, reach out to Jenny. There's just so much she can really teach you and kind of mentor you through.
Can I just add, and thank you, by the way, add one thing, because it is still January and I'm doing a launch month special offer because I really want this book to get into as many people's hands as possible. And it's a BOGO offer, which in this case is buy one, give one.
Yep.
And so for anybody who buys the book, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, independent bookstore, ebook, paperback, whatever.
Yeah.
I'll
Right
send, I
here.
can, you can request a free download. Yeah, actually, I think if you click on that buy one, give one circle there,
Yeah, right here.
right there. Yep, you can request a free ebook download that you can send to any friend, anybody you want. You don't have to give me their email address. You just fill out this form that Faye's showing here, and I'll send you a code that you can forward. And I
Oh.
really wanted to, I feel better about this than a lot of people like drop the price to 99 cents or something for a launch special. And I thought, you know what? I think my listeners are going to want to be able to share this with people
Mm-hmm.
in their lives that they think might learn something or might, I enjoy is, I hate using the word enjoy because it's a book about
Mm-hmm.
grief, but people have told me they enjoyed it, so I guess I can use that word. I don't know. Point being, I want to make sure people know that I'm doing this for the whole month of January. It was going to be a launch week special initially, but there's been so much happening in the world during my launch week. I would recommend, by the way, not launching a book during a national insurrection because it's not a great week to be launching a book. But anyway, I extended it for the whole month because I want to make sure people do have a chance to share it with others.
This is so awesome. Thank you,
So it's,
Jenny.
yeah,
Thank you so much for joining me. And I have so many more questions, but hopefully I'll have you back on my
I'd
live
love to.
stream.
Anytime, anytime. Thank you so much, Faye. This has been so fun. Great way to start my day here.
Awesome. All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching.